Today I'm going to show you something that you might never have seen, and also something that you might never have really thought of. Well, with that bombshell dropped, I suppose I better live up to the expectation I've placed on this video. As we all know, the Pokemon TCG is absolutely pumping. Sword and Shield continues to climb to new heights, Sun and Moon continues to climb to new heights, and Scarlet and Violet remains somewhat very hard to get. That pretty much sums up the Pokemon card market. End of video. No, I'm just kidding. Let's jump into it. Today's video is of course sponsored by the Collectr app. Some of the imagery in this video will come from the Collectr app. I'll talk about it a little bit more shortly. But here's something I think you would have never thought of. We all talk about, or I say we all, me in particular, I talk about total set value a lot and the correlation between total set value and booster box price. And what we do a lot of the time when it comes to sealed investing is we look at the Elite Trainer box price and we look at the booster box price, but we never really look at the era as a whole. So this is what I'm going to get to in today's video. This whole video is about the room for growth that we still have, even though we've seen massive amounts of appreciation, particularly across Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, like I said, and even early Scarlet and Violet sets, or even modern Scarlet and Violet sets like Destined Rivals, which are well and truly in the reprint window and should, in all accounts, cop, at least one, if not two reprints when it comes to booster boxes and Elite Trainer boxes. It's just crazy how much everything is growing. Even though everything has grown so rapidly, I want to show you just how much room for growth there still is, particularly in Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. A lot of people like to invest in vintage, and we've seen massive growth amongst a lot of vintage PSA slabs. And in fact, I'd like to dedicate a whole video to it soon, but have we seen how much money some of these Gold Star PSA 10 slabs have been going for? Just a little side note before we jump back into the video. Has anyone seen how much Torchic Gold Star sold for? Was that 125,000 US? Anyone see that Reddit post of that guy or girl? I didn't even check, but that person that had like 50 PSA 10 Gold Stars, including Rayquazas and multiple Torchics and multiple Tricos and a Mudkip and Umbreon and Latios and Latios, like just, what a collection. Hats off to you, sir or madam, with a phenomenal Gold Star PSA collection. But here's what I'm going to show you. Let's just jump straight into it. These two images up here, and I'm probably going to be out of the screen, so you might just have to listen to me. These are current booster box prices for Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. Now the Sun and Moon one I grabbed straight off the Collectr's Instagram page. Like I said, Collectr is a sponsor of today's video. And the other one I made up myself, which is all current pricing for Sword and Shield booster boxes. But here's one thing that I don't think anyone's ever looked at, and that is total booster box value for the era. So to give you an idea, Sun and Moon, let's jump out of Sword and Shield for a second. Sun and Moon's total booster box value, this is of course a sum of all 12 booster boxes from the whole Sun and Moon era, from base set right through to Cosmic Eclipse, is $28,172. That's insane. And look, a third of that value is nearly made up of Team Up alone, but $28,172. Just let that sink in for a second. Let's say hypothetically, you bought one of each booster box at $100 US. That would cost you $1,200 US. You would have turned $1,200 into $28,172. Let's say you'd bought two booster boxes of each set, and that cost you $2,400 US. You would have turned $2,400 US into north of $56,000 US. Crazy, crazy growth. Now let's jump Sun and Moon off the screen for a second and hop into Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield's total booster box value, that is the sum of every single booster box you can buy from Sword and Shield, which is also 12 booster boxes from base set right through to Silver Tempest, is $6,638. Same thing. If you'd bought every booster box at $100 US, that is $1,200 US. Currently, it's sitting at $6,638 US, which isn't even a quarter of the total value of Sun and Moon. And here's my argument around why there's still lots of growth to come. If we compare the eras, quite often we get like-for-like booster boxes. Why is that? Because the booster boxes or the Pokemon TCG sets, they follow A, the themes of the Pokemon, B, they follow different themes of types of Pokemon, like think about Surging Sparks, it was an electric/dragon based Pokemon card set, and then C, they also follow somewhat of the theme of the video games in some degree. Like it's got to have some relevance to what's also relevant in popular culture when it comes to Pokemon. So with all of those things combined, you end up sort of getting like for like sets. And what I mean by that is you can trace a lot of sets and their similarities. For example, and this is probably the most common similarity, if we jump back to XY era, we had a set called Roaring Skies. And then of course during Sword and Shield era, we had a set called Evolving Skies. Now if we compare Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, which like I said, Sword and Shield isn't even at a quarter of the total booster box value of Sun and Moon, and it's only an era past it. Does that mean there's 4 times growth in the next 3 to 4 years for Sword and Shield? Quite possibly. Let's take a little bit of a look at it. So if we bring up Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon again, all the booster boxes up on the screen, we can see some similarities there. Of course, there's 2 base sets. Now, typically base sets are quite weak. Sword and Shield base is lagging behind Sun and Moon base by about $200. So I think there's room there for Sword and Shield base to catch up. If we look at Rebel Clash and Guardians Rising is 3 times the booster box price of Rebel Clash. Now keep in mind, Rebel Clash is quite a rare booster box. It doesn't have many hits inside it, but neither does Guardians Rising. Guardians Rising has next to no hits inside it, as does Rebel Clash. But Rebel Clash, keep in mind, never got a reprint. It's actually quite a rare sealed product. Does that mean it's got room for growth? Yes, I think it does. Will it reach Guardians Rising prices in the next 3 to 4 years? Quite possibly. Keeping in mind 3 to 4 years, or the 3-year window, that's the difference in era time. We are 1 era ahead in Sword and Shield versus Sun and Moon. Now, if we compare some other sets like Darkness Ablaze and Burning Shadows, it's nearly 5 times the price Burning Shadows. Look, keep in mind Darkness Ablaze is not a rare booster box, and it also doesn't have many hits inside it. I see this set lagging for a long time before it really starts catching any sort of momentum. There's still going to be growth in Darkness Ablaze, but it's going to be incredibly slow. Now, if we compare some other ones, right, what else has some sort of commonality to it? For me, there's a couple of commonalities here. If you look at Fusion Strike and Unified Minds, and I know they're in different places within their eras, but they're respective psychic ghost-based sets. Unified Minds being held up with some really nice cards inside there, and of course Fusion Strike being held up with some also really nice cards with ghost and psychic based cards. You know, of course the Gengar VMAX and the Espeon and the Mew and the Celebi, etc. So if we compare the 2 sets, Unified Minds is sitting at over $2,300. It isn't even 3 years older than Fusion Strike. In fact, it's about 2.5 years older than Fusion Strike. Fusion Strike currently sitting at $802. Does that mean that Fusion Strike has the ability to triple its value in the next 2.5 to 3 years? Quite possibly. If we compare some other sets, you know, we have sets like, I would say Astral Radiance and Cosmic Eclipse bear some sort of similarity. It's the same sort of theme when it comes to the Pokemon card set, Astral and Cosmic. We got this time and space-based set. Now, I'm not saying Astral Radiance is as good a Pokemon card set as what Cosmic Eclipse is. It's not, by any means of the imagination. But they both have trainer galleries. Astral Radiance has the Origin form Dialga and Palkia. We also have Dialga, Palkia in Cosmic Eclipse. The only difference that comes into play, I think, with Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield is really that PSA 10 population and the price that some of those PSA 10 cards are going for. The amount of people that have been grading cards in Sword and Shield era has well and truly eclipsed Sun and Moon era. No longer do we have these PSA 10 populations sitting around 800 or 900 or 1,000 or in some cases 300. You know, the main chase cards inside sets are sitting around 6,000, 10,000. If we look at Silver Tempest and that Lugia, it's up around 19,000 PSA 10 copies now. So look, there is a difference there. I get that. That's well and truly a decent argument to bring into play. But that doesn't mean there's not room for growth in these booster boxes. So Sword and Shield sitting at $6,638 of value versus $28,172. there's still room for growth. And the big two to compare is probably Team Up versus Evolving Skies. Team Up being extremely short printed in comparison to Evolving Skies, but total set value from Evolving Skies actually eclipses Team Up. If you put the top 10 cards from Evolving Skies next to Team Up, Evolving Skies actually beats it pound for pound. Look, the Latios and Latios does probably knock out the Umbreon, but other than that, Evolving Skies is touching it. It's beating it in its top 10 chase cards. So Evolving Skies sitting at $2,175 a booster box. That booster box isn't going to get any cheaper. When it comes to its time period that I was talking about, in 3 years' time, where do you think Evolving Skies is going to be sitting? It's not going to be in 3 years' time a $1,000 booster box. It's not going to lose half its value. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a $4,000 or $5,000 booster box in 3 years' time. I honestly wouldn't be. I would not be surprised in any shape or form. So $6,600 versus $28,000. With all that in mind, the next step up is, of course, Scarlet and Violet. If I did the booster box value, like total booster box value for Scarlet and Violet, same thing. We would see it lagging well behind Sword and Shield. I haven't actually done it, and I probably should have done it for this video. I really wanted to show the comparison between Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield. But Scarlet and Violet's booster box value is probably sitting somewhere around that, what, $2,500 to $3,000 US mark, which means it's not even at half the value of Sword and Shield. So that shows us the room for growth that the whole Scarlet and Violet era has. Everyone that's saying, I'm scared to invest because prices are so high, when you actually drag it out onto this scale and go, okay, all of Scarlet and Violet booster boxes might add up to $2,500, $3,000. Then we look at Sword and Shield, which is at $6,600. Then we look at Sun and Moon, which is at $28,000. You go, hold on, all of Scarlet and Violet's booster boxes are $2,500 to $3,000. That's not even a tenth of the price of all the booster boxes from Sun and Moon. They're actually relatively cheap when you look at it that way. Look, reprints could happen. You can dollar cost average down, whatever the reason might be. But at the moment, they're cheap. They're the best investment in terms of, what you're going to get, return on money, and then followed closely by Sword and Shield. In the long term, if you're going to hold, you just can't go wrong with any of that. So there you go. I think that's something different that we haven't really explored on this channel in a little while, is the total booster box value from a whole era. Like I said, there'll be a link in the description for the Collectr app. It's a fantastic app. I urge everyone to download it. You can put your whole sealed and singles collection in there. You can see total values of sealed and singles in there. You can see total values of the collection. You can see the gains you can make as an investor. The big one as an investor now is you can click on set analytics. You can see all the top hits from inside a set. You can see the total set value from inside a set. The other big one is you can also sign up to be a pro member, and as a pro member there's awesome prizes that you can win from the Collectr app. So there you go. Total era value, not just set value or booster box value, but total era box value. I'm Michael, this is PokeOz. Catch everyone next time.